Hi folks, Aaron here from Aaron's Practical Reviews. Hopefully y'all are staying safe out there and doing what you're supposed to be doing to stay safe. Today's video, I want to focus on situational camera settings. What that means basically is like, for example, this. A situation where I'm indoors in a controlled environment and I have specific settings that I like to use here on the camera and not in auto mode. So let's get started right here with the T7i. So this is what the T7i looks like in auto mode in this situation right here. And then I'm going to go to my settings. So this is the T7i in full auto mode where I have no control over anything. The camera's doing all the work. And in most situations, that's actually not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. However, I like to change the image slightly. I kind of want slightly warmer colors typically than what this will give me. I think I look a little pale and a little washed out here, and I like to control the shutter speed and the ISO, and I don't want it to fluctuate whatsoever. So I will put my own settings on it so that way I can always keep a very consistent look and feel to my videos, especially for things like YouTube. So let me show you what it looks like with my settings. You come up to the top dial and you would switch that to manual mode. Okay. Once it's in manual mode, you can hit this Q or this Q. Instead of having auto white balance, I thought it was very pale. I set it to daylight. It makes the colors a little warmer in this situation. For the picture style, I'm using fine detail. For info, now when I'm here, I will adjust the sharpness. So here I like to up the sharpness a little, so you can just click on it and go back and forth to adjust that. And for the contrast, I like to up that a little. However, in this here, I'm going to drop that back to 0, because one thing I've found when you adjust the contrast, it makes your face look really blotchy. So it's best to, unless if you're okay with that, that's fine. I tend to look quite blotchy, so I'll leave these two alone here. You can change the saturation if you'd like, or the color tone. I leave that alone. Now, for the actual settings, I always try to keep the ISO as low as possible, and that keeps the image as clean as possible. So in this situation, I'm able to keep it at 100. The way I'm able to keep it at 100 and keep the exposure I like is I have to drop this down to 50. That's the shutter speed. Ideally, you want to have that double your frame rate. So in this situation here, I'm running, my frame rate is full HD 30 frames a second, right? Now, if I was at 60 frames a second, I'd want to run the shutter speed ideally at 120. But you can give or take a little bit there and it'll still look pretty good. These are just rules, your typical rules of thumb. If you take that shutter speed down too low, it'll look funky. If you go up too high, you won't get that blur, the natural blur that the eye is used to seeing. So it'll look a little funky as well. So that's typically the rule of thumb where you want to keep it. So in this situation right here, as you can see, so I have the autofocus, face tracking, full HD. These are my basic settings. Now again, the aperture, I keep it all the way down. On this lens, it's f1.8, so I got it at f1.8, the minimum. If you're on the kit lens, it's what, f4, f4.5, depending on what lens you have, and that's going to make a big impact on your ISO and your shutter speed. But with the f1.8, so for example, if you had the 50mm f1.8, you could have a similar shot. This is at 35mm, I'd just have to step back a little bit and I'd get a similar shot. So this is the basic setup that I like to use on the T7i indoors in this particular situation where I'm sitting in front of the camera. And again, here's the result. And this is the image that I get after all of those adjustments. I think this video looks pretty good. Dropping the contrast on this, I think, helped quite a bit, clear up some of that blotchiness. Yeah, if you go up on that contrast, you know, it's a fine line. You get up a little bit and all of a sudden now everything looks all blotchy, and it's, you don't look that way naturally, but somehow it picks up every little tiny hint of red. All of a sudden looks like a huge blotch on your face if you go up in the contrast too much on that. But anyways, here it is. And again, this is my settings. And now let's go back to auto really quick. Give me, I think I look a little pale and a little washed out here, and I like to control the shutter speed and the ISO, and I don't want it to fluctuate whatsoever. So I will put my own settings on it so that way. And so now let's talk about the situation where you're tracking a moving subject. And in this example, we're going to talk about birds. So bird photography. Now this would be the same for almost any kind of photography where you're tracking a subject. And these settings are pretty universal. I mean, you can make some tweaks here and there. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is go to P on your dial. And that's going to allow you to change the two settings you need to change here. So for starters, we're going to change the drive mode, which is this button here on the T7i. Now drive mode, it's in single shooting. We're going to go to high speed continuous. Next, we want to change the autofocus. Okay? We want AI servo. And what that's going to do is it's going to continually track. Okay, now those two combined are all you really need to change. And that's it. I do want the RAW plus JPEG because in this situation here, definitely a situation where I'm going to probably want to make some adjustments. And typically here we're going to add some shadow to the belly of the birds because typically the top of them is pretty bright and the underbelly is really dark. So it's really good to take these types of photos into Lightroom and boost up the undercarriage of the birds that you're getting flying by. And certain parts of the birds tend to be dark because of just the nature of them flying without any cover, and typically they're in pretty bright light. So you have some really bright spots and some dark spots on birds. So, but other than that, let's see. So this will, as you heard right there, that's the high speed continuous, and it's just going to keep tracking. Now I don't have that focused at all, so. But anyways, as you're tracking, the AI servo mode will catch, and you'll catch focus. And as you can see there, see that jumping around? Because I'm moving the camera. Yeah, so you can do it in this mode as well. But like I said, I am way back right now. If I'm up close to that thing, I can't see it. And when you're locked into a bird or something like that, and it's really far away, this here, every little tiny movement, this will just be all over the place, and you won't be able to track it very well. The viewfinder is definitely easier to track when you're zoomed in. So in combination, you're going to be shooting a lot quicker, up to about 6 to 7 frames a second, and it's going to continually change focus to track. It's going to be like a tracking focus. So as that bird's flying by, you're locking on and you're continually up. And hopefully most of the shots will be in focus. And if not, at least some of them will be in focus, and you'll get some usable images out of that. Now, a lot of that's going to depend on the lens. For example, my Tamron 150-600 does a good job if they're going in a completely, straight across at the equal distance. However, if they fluctuate the distance back and forth, it struggles a bit. Some lenses are better with that. Some are worse. So a good lens, for example, I don't have it, but I've heard great reviews on it for this type of thing, especially for a crop sensor, would be the Canon, I believe it's the 100-400. And it's got a little window on it that shows your focusing distance. It's a newer lens, but I've heard that's one of the fastest focusing lenses. So a lens like that, for example, would be really good at this type of photography, and it's something I may get in the future. I don't have it now, but also, yeah, so this style here is pretty common when you're tracking moving subjects. All right, let's talk about landscape photography and a couple of the settings that you want to use here. And this is very simple, actually. I'll show you how to do it, but it's very simple. So we're going to change it from the P. We're going to go over to AV mode, which is aperture priority. And we're going to what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this up pretty far, up to about f9 or f11, as you can see right here. That's what I'm changing. Depending on how far away it is, I just up the aperture to, between f7.1 up to like f11, somewhere in there. Find the sweet spot as far as the sharpness of the lens. Most lenses, that's typically their sweet spot for sharpness. If you get up to like the f16, f22, some of them go up to f22. Some of them, the image kind of suffers a little bit when you get up that high. But landscape photography, the settings to me are the easiest part of it. The most difficult challenge for landscape photography for me is finding that perfect composition to where you don't have a lot of distraction, to where you find you can make all this. Typically, there's a lot involved in the picture. Make it all work and look appealing, because I've found it's really easy to make something like a bird. If you zoom all the way in on a bird, look really cool, right? If you get like the face of a cool hawk or something like that, that's a simple shot. The composition's simple. Boom, there it is. It's sharp, looks good. Landscape photography is a completely different animal. You're creatively using composition, and the settings of the camera are probably the easiest in my opinion as far as that goes. Now, there are other ways you can use focus stacking and stuff like that, where you get different aspects of different focal points of the image in focus, and then you would put it into a software and stack them all. Now, that's complicated. You would need a tripod. You need some time. You'd hope that the lighting was the same, because if a cloud comes over or something like that, it could really alter how the other half of the image looks. So let's not get into that right now. I haven't even experimented much with that. However, these simple settings right here for landscape are pretty much all you need to do. Just open that aperture up, close it down, I should say. Get it to, the f7, f9 area, f11, and work on your composition for landscapes. That's pretty much what I do, and I get pretty good results. Of course, the lens does help. If you get a So now let's talk about portrait photography and some of the best settings for that. Now for portrait photography, I think the key is creating a separation from the subject and the background. So I think here it is very important, but not like absolutely necessary, but I think it's very important to have a fairly fast lens, or a lens that has a large aperture, like an f1.8. F2, f1.4. I mean, you can get away with an f2.8, I think, but ideally you want a lens with an f1.8, which means you want to maintain that, let's say f1.8, which means you have to use AV mode or shoot manually. Now, I would recommend using AV mode if you are a beginner. And actually, I use AV mode most of the time anyways, because you can adjust most of the other stuff in Lightroom and stuff, but you want to keep that separation from the background. So in this situation here, it's fairly simple as far as the setting on it. Let's say you start in AV mode. So let's stay in AV mode for the sake of this. Okay, so we're going to turn the dial up top to AV mode. Right there, aperture priority. We're going to drop this all the way down to the minimum aperture of the lens you are using. In this case, it's a f1.8. Okay, we're gonna put the shooting mode on single shooting mode. Autofocus, here I'm gonna use one shot. And these are the base settings we're gonna start with. Now, here's where I like to change it up. Up here, select the focusing points, the little button up here. And what we're going to do here is you're going to pick and place that as close to the eye as you can. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. In the viewfinder here, if you push that again, you can use this to go side to side. And while you're in the viewfinder, if you want to change it to go up and down, you just push this button and it'll toggle the up and down. So you can use your hands like that to go back and forth, or use your fingers, I mean, on the actual camera body. Or if you'd like, you could obviously just tap and push. And the same goes if you're in portrait mode and the camera is sideways. So yeah, so again, side to side, push this right here to adjust it to up and down, or use here. And what you're trying to do here is focus on the eye. Put this on the subject's eye, and you should be good to go. And that's it. So the other option in this situation, if you don't want to use the viewfinder, and this is equally as effective, if not more, and it's very simple, is you hit this button right here for live view mode, and with the tracking, it will track the subject's face, as you can see there, and you can take pictures that way. One of the keys is this right here, which is the autofocus method. If you have it on this right here, which is the autofocus face detection, now if your subject stands up, or if you go into portrait mode or whatever, it will also track their face, as you can see. Yep, so it'll stay tracking their face and allow you to take pictures that way. And that works also. So one more. Now obviously this is not the best composition, but as you can see there, it'll track all around the frame. Right there, ready? Perfect. I just try to stay focused on the eye and get the eyes as tack sharp as possible. And I figure if I can do that, the rest of the image will work itself out. And if I can keep that separation from the background, that's also extremely important. So, all right, so I thought I'd throw this in here as well as a little added bonus on how to record in this certain situation. Now I'm recording these camera settings with this camera from back here, and I got a little light up there, LED light. And this is actually more difficult than you would think. One of the keys here is that when I'm showing in front here, I don't want this to start hunting focus. So I've got this on manual autofocus, and to make sure that it's tack sharp back here, what I will do here is I'm going to hit this little search button here. This is on the 6D Mark II. Hit this here, it'll zoom in, tap it again, and as you can see there, see how that's focused on that? So here I'm going to adjust the focus and fine tune it, and then I'm going to touch it again, and now it's focused on there manually and it's ready to record. And I've got it in manual mode, and I have set it that way to control the light. So again, this little guy right here is the key. Tap on that a couple times and you can adjust where that is. So here, keep it on a tripod, adjust that, keep it in manual focus, and you can focus on that and it'll give you a nice clean image, and you don't have to worry about it hunting when your hand comes up in front. Just a little bonus tip there. All right, so I think I covered quite a bit there in that little video. And again, these are settings that I have just learned over the years, and they're the most comfortable settings for me in those situations. Again, this is situational settings. So I found that those are great starting points, and they obviously should be tweaked based on what you prefer, if you're going to even use those. But if you do, I think you'll find that they will definitely help you maneuver through new situations. And from there, you may find new ways to do things that are, above and beyond and better than what I do. Another key point here is, don't forget, for video, you really want to get the colors and the contrast and everything right beforehand, Whereas in photography, a lot of that stuff you can actually take to Lightroom and stuff. And as long as you have decent exposure and you nail focus, you can pretty much fix most mistakes or most lighting errors or whatever in the photo. However, with video, it's just so much harder because it's such a large file and there's so much more involved. And depending on the lighting and everything, it could get really difficult, where a photo is very simple to correct. But again, gotta nail focus. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. Subscribe, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. And stay safe out there. You know, we're gonna make it through this as the world, I guess. I don't even know what you would say to that. This is so ridiculous as far as like, it's just mind-blowing what's going on in the world right now. Never in my lifetime did I ever think this was possible. But anyways, it's hard. I hate to talk about it, but it's just such a presence everywhere you turn, and it's obviously dominating the world right now. So stay safe, stay healthy. God bless everybody in this weird time. And while you got the time, try out some of these new tips. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.